Hello everyone. Welcome to Story Hub channel. Discover real stories of wife betrayals, shocking twists and turns and their secrets. Hit the subscribe button and get to our story.
I never imagined I'd be the guy turning to strangers online for advice, but here I am. My wife and I met back in college, and we were each other's first real love. We've been together for 10 years now, married for 8 of those. For the longest time, I thought we had something truly special, but lately, it seems like I was the only one who believed that. A little while back, she started a new job, and at first, it wasn't easy for her because she's always been a bit shy. I was the one cheering her on to make some friends, and she eventually did, a group of women who were all either single, divorced, or dating around, but none of them were married. At first, I was happy for her, it was good to see her fitting in. But then she started going out more, grabbing drinks, hitting up parties, and doing a lot more with these friends. That's when I started to get uneasy. I tried to talk to her about it, but I didn't want to seem like I was holding her back or being controlling. Still, her new lifestyle was starting to creep into our relationship, especially in the bedroom. She'd never been one to initiate things, but now she was either too tired or just not in the mood, thanks to all those late nights out. Then came the new manager at her company. She and her friends seemed to take a real liking to him. At first, she'd mention him here and there, no big deal. But it escalated to the point where she was talking about how he handled situations that didn't even seem work-related. I asked her why she was so fixated on this guy, but she waved it off like I was overthinking things. Soon after, she started asking if I ever regretted not having more experience with other women before we got married. I told her no, I didn't need anyone else, she was all I ever wanted. I swear I saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes, but before I could ask, she changed the topic. Then, out of nowhere, she suggested we try an open marriage, thinking it might bring some excitement back into our lives. I was floored. She'd never been that kind of person, she wasn't exactly adventurous when it came to sex. My first reaction was to refuse, and I couldn't help but wonder if this had something to do with her new boss. She admitted she felt like she'd missed out on something but didn't want to lose me, so this seemed like a way to keep us both happy. I warned her she was playing with fire, but in the end, like a fool, I gave in. We laid out some ground rules, the biggest being that no one was allowed to stay overnight in our home. So, off she went, dating and having flings for almost a year while I somehow missed the fact that she was seeing her manager all along. I, on the other hand, went on a few dates but couldn't bring myself to sleep with anyone. It just didn't feel right to me. My wife would check in to see how I was handling things, but she never really changed her behavior. Eventually, I felt like that love I had for her, the innocence of what marriage is supposed to be, was slipping away, and it was killing me inside. Then I went on a date with an incredible woman who had moved here from South Korea. We hit it off instantly. Her sense of humor was quick, and her smile, it could make you lose track of yourself. We started seeing each other more often, and things got physical. Honestly, I'd never experienced sex like that before. She made me feel wanted in a way I hadn't felt in years. At first, my wife found it amusing, but as time passed, she started questioning my relationship with this woman. I didn't hesitate to remind her that this whole open marriage thing was her idea in the first place and that she was the one seeing her manager. She looked like she had something to say but just kept quiet. Then she started acting different, coming home early, making surprise dinners, cleaning the house like never before. She even started showing up at my job with lunch and, out of nowhere, was initiating sex. And to be honest, if it weren't for the fact that she opened up our marriage, which I admit, I agreed to, I would have been thrilled. But when I did give in to her advances, it was just to get it over with. It felt like both of us were watching our relationship crumble right in front of our eyes. I asked her what made her suddenly change her behavior, and she told me she wanted to prove how much she loved me and that she was satisfied with me. I couldn't help but laugh a little and bring up her group of friends, her manager, boyfriend, and all those one-night stands. That day, she didn't say a word and just went to bed in tears. The very next day, she came to me saying she wanted to close our marriage, admitting that the whole thing had been a huge mistake and that she regretted every part of it. She said she wanted to focus on us again. I told her to level with me and explain what really kicked all this off. She finally confessed that her friends had planted the idea, constantly talking about their wild sexual escapades. When her manager came into the picture, he fueled that mentality, and things spiraled into an emotional affair that only became physical once we opened the marriage. Like that somehow made it any less of a betrayal. She described it like driving a car while drunk, exhilarating in the moment, but now she's dealing with the crash and the damage it caused. She said she realized she didn't need to compare our relationship to others, and what we had was unique and special. But now, she feels like she's completely ruined our marriage and any chance we had at a future together. I told her straight up that I might never be able to see her as my wife again, and hearing that made her completely break down. I just held her in silence while she cried, and eventually, she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. Since that night, she's quit her job, cut off ties with all her friends and her manager, and promised me she's willing to spend the rest of her life proving herself, working to be seen as my wife again. But here's the thing, I haven't cut ties with the woman I've been seeing. She makes me feel like a man, like I'm strong and capable, something I haven't felt with my wife for a long time. Honestly, I'm stuck. I want to get back to that special feeling we once had, but I can't ignore the fact that my lover pulled me out of a dark place when I needed it most. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, we have our first marriage counseling session in a couple of hours. I'm not sure how it's going to go. The therapist seems experienced and open-minded, someone who genuinely wants to help us, even though we've only had one session so far. My wife used the session as a chance to spill everything. Turns out, this group of friends had her questioning whether she'd missed out on life because she had always been committed to me, her first and only boyfriend. She felt like she never got to experience the same wild adventures these women had, most of them divorced, none of them married. The therapist explained that this kind of thinking can really harm a marriage because it creates a gap in perspective. My wife seemed to agree and added that when her new manager started getting close to her, those same friends encouraged her to see where it could go. They told her it was her chance to find herself or whatever. She admitted that, at first, it was just emotional and nothing physical happened, but one of her divorced friends suggested the idea of an open marriage as a loophole, saying it could actually make us stronger. So, regretfully, at least that's what she says now, she convinced me to go along with opening up our marriage, and that's when the so-called adventure began. She admitted it was intoxicating, blinding even, but it was all surface level compared to the substance we had built over the years. She said she started having doubts and could see the pain in my eyes, but she convinced herself it was all part of the experience. Now, she says she'll never forgive herself for what she did, and she realized how bad things had gotten when she noticed a shift in me. In the beginning, my wife thought that since I was going on dates too, I'd eventually come around to accepting everything and be fine with her situation. But things took a turn once my relationship with my lover became more serious. Suddenly, I was smiling out of the blue, my eyes lighting up when a text came in, and I'd happily step out of the room to take a call. My wife noticed all of this, and it hit her hard. She said she felt a deep sense of dread, and before long, she started having panic attacks. Desperate for guidance, she turned to her friends again, but they brushed it off, saying my reaction was normal in an open marriage. It wasn't until that same divorced friend, the one who originally suggested opening our marriage, said, "Looks like his lover makes him happy," that the gravity of the situation hit her. The thought of another woman, not her, being the one to make me happy almost caused her to pass out. That's when she finally realized how absurd everything had become and begged her friends for advice on how to win me back. Their response? "If you couldn't handle it, you shouldn't have opened the marriage." That's when she realized these people were toxic and had been a danger to our marriage all along. Since then, she's been doing everything she can to try and win me back, no matter what it takes. During that counseling session, I didn't share a whole lot from my side, but I did tell the counselor that I was still seeing my lover. The counselor said that there was no way we could resolve things as long as my lover was in the picture and suggested we schedule another session the next day. She also mentioned that staying with your first partner for this long is rare and implied that it's possible to weather any storm. I get the feeling she wants us to be one of her success stories. Anyway, sorry this update is so long, but I figured I'd give you the full picture. I appreciate all the support from you guys. Since then, I've moved out and am staying at my brother's place. Honestly, it feels like I'm living in an episode of Jerry Springer. During our second counseling session, I decided to ask my wife some tough questions. One of the questions came from a suggestion online, asking if she was sure nothing physical had happened before we opened the marriage. She looked down, refusing to look me in the eye, and begged me not to make her say it. She said if she said it out loud, it would completely destroy us. But after I pressed her for the truth, she finally admitted that while it wasn't full-on physical, they did touch themselves in front of each other. Apparently, her manager convinced her that because they weren't having actual intercourse, it didn't count as cheating. They were just appreciating each other's beauty. I was absolutely stunned. As she confessed, she started shaking, hyperventilating, and breaking down into tears, apologizing over and over. Even the counselor seemed taken aback. My wife fell to her knees, clinging to my legs, sobbing and saying how sorry she was. Then I asked her what had changed her perspective on him. She said that after she started pulling away from her friends and distancing herself from that lifestyle, her manager's attitude towards her shifted. One evening, after a meeting, she overheard him talking about her to another guy at work. He was bragging about how easy it was to get her, saying, "She's proof that you can't trust the quiet ones." When the other guy asked if he actually liked her, he responded by calling her a nice distraction and made it clear he had no plans to leave his fiancée. He admitted he just wanted to get it out of his system, claiming the only woman who truly understood him was his fiancée. To top it off, he even mentioned feeling sorry for me, but ended with, "You snooze, you lose." When my wife heard him talk about her like she was nothing more than a cheap thrill, it completely broke her. The reality of what she had done, how she betrayed me for something so shallow, pushed her to the brink. She said she left work that day, threw up in the parking lot, and the only thought running through her mind was, "What have I done? Please forgive me." I asked her if she ever loved him and when she stopped loving me. Through her tears, she looked straight at me and said she never stopped loving me, which, if I'm being honest, made everything feel even worse. She explained that he was just different, and though she thought it was love at the time, she now sees how foolish she was. Then she grabbed my arm, and with a surprising amount of strength, told me she misses us, the connection we had before all of this. She even suggested we pack up and move somewhere new, just the two of us, like it was always meant to be. I told her that wouldn't be fair to my lover, and that I needed time away to process everything. Hearing that, she completely lost it, sobbing uncontrollably, saying things that didn't even make sense. She clung to me as if I was about to disappear. It took both me and the counselor quite a while to calm her down. Eventually, the counselor managed to get her to understand that maybe some time apart could help us both heal. When I got home and started packing my things, my wife received a video call on her laptop. It was from one of her old friends, the very same one who had encouraged the open marriage in the first place. She was in tears. Apparently, after my wife left her job, this friend and the manager began a fling of their own, but now she was facing a pregnancy scare. The manager, true to form, freaked out, accused her of trying to baby trap him, and immediately cut off all contact. To make matters worse, this friend had a boyfriend, who found out about the affair when he came across emails between her and the manager, discussing the potential pregnancy. Her boyfriend left her, and now she was utterly devastated and humiliated. She reached out to my wife because she thought my wife had somehow managed to save our marriage and was desperate for advice. I just shook my head and walked out the door. Since then, I've been staying at my brother's place. Once again, I want to thank everyone for your thoughts and support. Update. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who took the time to reach out with advice, share similar stories, or just lend a listening ear. It really means a lot. Quite a bit has happened since my last update. That former friend who had the pregnancy scare? Well, it turns out she was actually pregnant, but the stress from losing her boyfriend and the shame of the whole situation led to her having a miscarriage. After that, she completely snapped and went scorched earth on the manager. She exposed him to upper management, his fiancée, and anyone else who would listen. Curiosity got the best of me, so I ended up finding his fiancée on Facebook. She's exactly what you'd imagine, your picture-perfect small-town girl, family-oriented, and a special needs teacher. Just a wholesome person all around. Honestly, I couldn't understand why a guy like him would risk everything to mess around with other women when he had someone like her. But I guess that's one of those mysteries of life. That former friend ended up reaching out to me, wanting to hear my side of the story. She was gathering evidence to bring the manager down, and she wanted to meet in person to talk everything through. I was hesitant at first, but after we both got COVID tests, I agreed. When I saw her, it was clear she was a wreck. Her eyes were dark and puffy from crying, and it looked like she hadn't slept in days. She seemed haunted by everything that had happened. As soon as we sat down, she immediately apologized for her role in my wife's affair. She told me she had recently spoken with my wife and learned that I had moved out. She didn't try to shift the blame onto anyone else, she took full responsibility for her actions. I thanked her for coming forward and asked why she was going through all this effort to expose the manager. She explained that losing both her child and the love of her life had fundamentally changed her. She said she couldn't even look at herself in the mirror without feeling disgusted, and she couldn't sleep because every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look on her ex-boyfriend's face when he found out about the affair. It was clear that she was consumed by guilt, and this meeting was almost like her way of punishing herself. She went on to say that because fraternizing with coworkers was against company policy, and given the manager's position of authority, he was almost certainly going to be fired and blacklisted from the industry altogether. The same thing might happen to her, and she had accepted that outcome. After getting my side of the story, she apologized again before leaving. After that meeting, I needed to swing by the house to grab a few things, so I timed it for when I thought my wife wouldn't be home. Unfortunately, she was. What really caught me off guard was the sight of all our wedding photos spread across the coffee table. She was sitting there, just staring at them, with tears in her eyes. When she noticed me, she tried to hug me, but I gently pushed her away. She offered to make me lunch, but I told her I wouldn't be staying long. Before I could leave, she showed me a message she'd received 2 days earlier from her former manager. She had blocked his number, but he managed to get in touch with her using a new one, furious that she had helped her friend expose him. Apparently, after reading some advice online, my wife decided to assist her former friend in bringing him down, thinking it might give us a chance to rebuild our marriage. She hoped that by revealing the affair, she could somehow take away its power. I told her I was proud of her for having the courage to do that, but that it didn't change anything between us. I also informed her that I'd decided to stop going to marriage counseling and would be focusing on individual therapy instead. She broke down, crying softly, and told me she understood. To be honest, I don't feel the relief or anger I thought I would after everything that's happened. Instead, I just feel numb toward her. I know that's not a normal reaction, which is why I'm planning to work through it in therapy. I also took my brother's advice and met with a divorce lawyer, just to be prepared. Right now, I'm not sure I'm willing to fight for this marriage, and I think my wife can sense that. Before I left, she made a desperate attempt to start something intimate, but when I refused, she lost it. She screamed, asking me what my lover gives me that she can't. She yelled so loudly that I'm sure the neighbors heard her, promising to do whatever I wanted. I just shook my head and told her that after everything we've been through, it's clear where our marriage is heading. If she couldn't see it, I didn't know what else to say. Thanks again to everyone for your support. This is where I'm at right now. Second story. My boyfriend, 30M, and I, 27M, have been together for nearly 3 years now, and for the past year, we've been in a long-distance relationship. Usually, we manage by making sure we see each other at least once a month, but recently, we've hit a rough patch. He's been studying for an important board exam, while I was abroad visiting my aunt on vacation. When we finally saw each other after 2 months apart this summer, I could immediately sense that something was off. I ended up snooping on his phone and found, in his deleted photos, that he had downloaded Grindr, a hookup app, at some point. When I confronted him about it, he gave me this story about a friend asking him to download it to check on someone else. I wanted to believe him, so I did, and I even apologized for snooping. But something didn't sit right with me. After he flew back home, I decided to check Grindr on my old phone, searched his area, and found his profile. His account had a couple of PG photos, and he had it labeled as chat, friends, not hookup, similar to how some people set up their profiles. I confronted him again, and this time he admitted that he downloaded the app because he was feeling lonely and unhappy with where our relationship was at, but he swore he never talked to anyone or hooked up with anyone. After several long conversations and him putting in real effort to win me back, I forgave him, and things have been pretty good since then. But the whole long-distance thing still triggers my anxiety, and I'm not sure if I can fully trust him again. The next time I saw him, I snooped on his phone again, and this time I didn't find anything. But the fact that I even felt the need to check makes me uncomfortable. I can't help but wonder if I was too quick to trust him and forgive him, or if he lied about not hooking up with anyone. I wish none of this had ever happened, and honestly, I wish I never found out about it in the first place, because I love him so much. But the truth is, it's changed a lot for me.